What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. In this video we're going to be showcasing what I do and how to be a real good SnD player. This is going to include things like my settings. We'll even delve into a little bit of controller settings, stuff I've picked up over the years, followed by the classes I use in order to get maximum efficiency in search and destroy. Now keep in mind, everything you're going to see is going to be meta. I typically don't encourage running meta setups because I really want people to be able to use the guns they want to use, not what the game forces them to use. Now, you will do better using meta guns, but it doesn't necessarily mean you have to. So we're going to get right into it. We're going to come over here to settings, and we're going to start with graphics. So if you're on PC, even if you're using controller, you should be running full screen. This is going to allow your computer to optimize the game and give the best overall performance. But if you stream or record like I do, it does mean that more of your resources are going to go towards the game, not necessarily your recording devices, so you can lose a little bit of performance there, but it's not a big deal. I play in 1080p. One of the reasons I don't go any higher is it puts strain on the video card, and even though I'm running a 2070 Super and I absolutely could play in 1440, I don't feel there's enough of a benefit because I'm here for the best performance, aka the best frame rate to see people. I don't necessarily need the game to look pretty, unlike if I was playing a more role-playing type game like World of Warcraft or Last of Us. I run on 144 refresh rate. You'll have to have a monitor and a cable that supports that, but what that's going to do is it's how many times your screen is going to cycle versus those frames per second, meaning if somebody hops around a corner, you're going to actually see them, and granted this is in milliseconds, faster than somebody would, let's say, on console that's only playing at 60 hertz. As far as the advanced resolution, nothing there. Aspect ratio should be automatic. It's going to be usually at whatever your monitor is. Most people are going to run anywhere between like 21.9 and 1610. Always disable VSync. It's horrible. It puts so much strain on the card. You lose an insane amount of frames. Down here, I actually cap my frame rate limit at 144. One of the reasons I do that is I need to maintain a minimum of 144 to match my hertz so I don't experience any glitches. Now typically that cap is actually going to run closer to 160 even under load, and that's just because they can't perfectly limit at 144. But what that's going to do is it's going to prevent you from shooting up into the 200s and then at random situations dropping down into the 140s, which can experience a little bit of glitchiness from frame drop. When I'm not in the game, I run at a 60 just to remove some of the strain off my video card so my fans aren't blaring the entire time. And then if I'm on desktop or something in a lobby, I put it down to 15 again just to take that load off. NVIDIA highlights I always disable. It's going to cause issues if you keep it in. I've noticed the DirectX crashing error more with this because this does act like kind of an overlay. You can run it if you want to help yourself get clips, but it really doesn't matter at the end of the day. Text to resolution, I go low. You could go lower, but when it's all the way at the bottom, very low, you get a little bit of distortion. You can see here in the picture, it's not pretty. It may actually make it harder to see people. So I just run standard low, and that's actually going to be pretty much what I do on everything. I disable bullet impacts, all this. And what this does is, even though my computer could run at ultra settings, the game would look pretty, I would get right around 100 frames per second while recording. And the whole point is to get more frames so you more quickly respond to what's happening. You see people easier, and this is going to allow you to do it. One of the big things I always come down here and look at is actually going to be the DirectX. You want to turn this off if you're using any of the NVIDIA cards. This heavily impacts performance. It makes the game look fantastic, but it dramatically, we're talking about a 60% efficiency reduction by using this. Would highly recommend you just, if you want the game to look prettier, use these settings over this. All this stuff, post-processing effects, should be turned off. Anti-aliasing is kind of more of a preference. What it does is it actually adds a little bit of blur. You can see on the right-hand side, this is actually anti-aliasing off. This actually looks crisper, but it causes this kind of jagged edge, even though everything's sharper. So sometimes people will turn on the anti-aliasing to kind of clean that up, give it a blurred effect. It's going to reduce frame rate. Post-processing always puts a heavy load on the video card. It's not necessarily worth it unless you just have a preference for it. this is always going to be the better choice. It's also going to make enemies stand out a little bit more as opposed to the blurred effect. And then everything else is just pretty much disabled. You don't ever want to run motion blur, ever. It's just going to make you miss enemies. And it actually can make people nauseous sometimes from the movement effects, so highly recommend just turning that all off. For audio, I use boost high. Now there's several options in here, so the caveat to this is going to be, you know, whatever works best for you. I would say any of these are pointless. Between these three, whichever one you like the best is what I would go with. Master volume 100, I absolutely can't stand voiceover volume, so I almost turned that completely off. Effects volume 100, and then I like the classic for nostalgia on the hit marker effects, but again, this is really all personal preference. If we come over to general, I do play on a 120 field of view. Some people may not like this, and that's okay, but simple math says the more screen you can see, the better chance you have to see enemies, the better you should do. Now, take that with a grain of salt, because ultimately it's personal preference, but the math is there. If you can see more of the screen, you can kill more people. I always go a little higher on the brightness. You can probably get away with 40 to 50, but this game is extremely dark because it's one of the first Call of Duties where there is an eye adjustment. For a lot of you who don't know this, entering a room or leaving a room will actually either A, be really bright, or B, really dark, because your character's eyes have to adjust. It's a really wonky feature to have in a multiplayer. It's very cool, it's very immersive towards the game, but maybe a better fit for campaign. But regardless, it's in the game, so when you enter a room, things are going to look very dark from the outside. When you're leaving a room, things are going to look very bright. I've died way too many times from not being able to see an enemy in a dark corner, so I turned my brightness up a little bit. As far as keyboard and mouse, I'm actually running on a 7.5. I recently made a video about Symphony's sensitivity, and I had to go up a tiny bit from that because I utilize a 400 DPI, which is how many pixels your mouse moves across the screen, and it was just a little bit too slow for me, so I had to up that a little bit. A good aim range would be anywhere between 3,000 and 4,000, and the way you can figure that out is your DPI multiplied by your in-game sensitivity. So right now I'm sitting right around 3,000, 2,900. I'm not gonna do the math, I don't really care that much. And then I actually use relative sensitivity. Now what this does is, it means in order for my character to zoom in and turn, it's going to be the same distance no matter what the situation is, no matter what zoom level I'm aiming at. And the benefit to that is if you have muscle memory for flicking or whatever the case may be, that's not going to change depending on what you're using. So that's highly recommended. You don't have to. There is a legacy option where the ADS multiplier is going to be affected, so no matter, you know, if you're aiming in at a 1 times or a 5 times, they're going to be independent of each other. I wasn't a fan of that. You may like it, it's all personal preference. Under mouse sensitivity, don't change any of this. Just leave it a 1-to-1 ratio. That's what you should always run with. This is actually incorrect. It looks like it reverted after a most recent patch update, but this is normally, for me, at a 0.70. And it's because if I'm aiming down sights, typically I'm not super close quarters on PC. We don't get aim assist rotation, which is fine, but we more than likely just have to spray close range in order to track a target. So ADS scent multiplier low is for long range when I'm sniping people or just, you know, drilling people from a long range, because the movement they're going to make at a great distance is less than they would up close. So I would rather have small precise movements than quick snap movements, and then I can just spray close range. But it's your own personal opinion. Everything else down here is going to be a personal preference. I can't imagine you would use inverted mouse. I don't see where that would ever be comfortable on PC. Maybe controller, but mouse acceleration, filtering, smoothing, all that disabled. Smoothing, actually, you really want to make sure that's off, because it's going to add an AI to your mouse that's going to try and help it smooth track across. Really, that's bad, because you want your own input to be the only input on mouse, meaning a 1-to-1. So if I move my mouse, my aimer moves. This smoothing can kind of affect that, which is actually not good for precision aiming on PC. For controller, if you're using Xbox or PS4, it doesn't really matter. It could be affected if you're using a SCUF controller with paddles in the back, but typically I'm going to run tactical so I can drop shot and crouch with my stick and not have to take my thumb off my aimer. I run a 7 sensitivity when I'm on. This is, in my opinion, actually still pretty slow, but fast enough that I can move. Controller gains benefit from aim assist rotation, which means if your feet are moving and you're not aimed in, it's going to rotate your camera towards the target, so there's really not a reason to play on a super high sensitivity unless you're sniping or something weird like that. Down here at ADS sensitivity multiplier, I turned that down just a little bit, but with aim assist, it's not like on PC where I need my aim assist to be really affected when I'm aiming down sights, because it's going to lock on, guys. I mean, the computer is literally going to slow your aim down already. So unless you're really jittery, there's no reason to actually touch that too much. Standard aim response curve, just because that's what I played every Call of Duty at for the past 10 years. You can go dynamic. I think there is something broken right now with dynamic. I'm not super sure on that. Aim assist standard is what you're going to use. That is where you're going to get your aim assist rotation. That's the one that's actually going to turn your camera when you're close to the target. I believe there is a bug right now with focusing. I don't know if it's been fixed, where it just has an extremely strong aim slowdown, but you don't get the camera rotation when you're spraying close range. So I guess it could be good in certain situations, maybe like Warzone, but typically you're going to want to run standard. All this down here again is going to be personal preference. I would recommend scale aim assist with FOV for PC players, because if you do play on a higher FOV, aim assist gets extremely wonky if you don't have that enabled. Your slide behavior, wherever that may be, right here, you're going to want to use tap, because if you do hold, most of the time it's going to mess you up and it's actually going to cause you to crouch rather than necessarily slide, and you're going to end up getting caught out. Automatic sprint again is personal preference. I usually don't recommend it because in a close range situation, let's say you're chasing somebody down and you're trying to spray around a corner, you can't spray while sprinting. So if you accidentally move your left thumbstick forward, it's going to cause your gun not to shoot for a second, and it's just kind of a wonky play style. It also prevents you from having a way of being quiet during search and destroy unless you're aiming down sights and walking forward, because it's going to prevent you from just normally walking. So would recommend just not doing that. It's not very good. The next thing we'll go into is going to be the various classes. Now, under the classes, this is going to be exactly meta. It's going to be what I think is the personal best classes you can use in any given situation. So the first one is going to be the good old M4. Now, this may change depending on your personal comfortability. I actually don't run an optic on the M4, which opens up a slot down here for something else. Running an optic can kind of limit you. Realistically, you're going to use the Grenader. What that does is it gives you more weight on the barrel down here. It stabilizes your shot and gives you a dramatic amount of range increase as well, at the cost of some mobility. Now you make up for that by coming down here to the Underbarrel Commando foregrip. This is also increasing the stability and the recoil stabilization at the cost of movement speed, but not aim down sight speed. So even though we're using that heavy barrel, this is still going to give us that extra ADS that we need, because it's not actually punishing you for having a recoil stabilization on your aim. Some people like to use the Merc foregrip, but realistically at the end of the day, you probably shouldn't be spraying with your M4. I would say that's kind of situational. Strippled grip tape is a meme. If you have a gun that has strippled grip tape and you are not using it, you are playing wrong. Sprint to fire speed is almost more important than ADS speed, because in those situations where you and the enemy don't know you're there, it's going to be all reactionary of who can stop running and start shooting the fastest. I mean, this is a must. You should be using that at all times. I run the no stock again just for increased aim down sight speed. I actually, with all the other recoil attachments, don't find that this is really bad to have this on here. As far as, you know, the recoil loss, you could theoretically use the forged tack down here at the sacrifice of a little bit of movement speed and ADS speed. I feel like this is better because I always just want to be able to get my sights up quicker. Now this one down here can be interchanged. A lot of people like to run sleight of hand since you're not using an extended mag. I've actually found that FMJ is more consistent with me in kills, because typically I'm not up in your face with the M4. I'm typically picking you off of some type of power position, whether it be in the hostel on Arklov Peak or, you know, Grandma's house on Ramaza. It doesn't really matter. That extra penetration has helped me get a lot of kills with power positions. It's also very inconsistent, and pay attention to this part. It is very, very inconsistent on what you actually can shoot through in this game. Stuff that looks like it would be paper thin and you think you can shoot through, you absolutely can't. It's impossible. It doesn't do anything. Other things that you're like, there's no way in hell I'd be able to shoot through, like concrete mediums, goes right through like paper. So it just really fits your play style. It also helps me because I don't run Ghost. So the FMJ allows me to, in a measure of milliseconds, take down UAVs if people call them in, which I found incredibly useful. So, but like I said, it could be swapped out for sleight of hand. I don't feel like monolithic suppressor is necessary on this gun. We're not in Warzone. We're not drilling people from 500 and 600 meters. The added weight to the gun and the slower ADS speed to me doesn't make a lot of sense, but it's your own personal choice. Now, typically, you're going to actually want to run EOD. It's actually kind of a troll if you're not running EOD, just because there are so many explosives in this game. Shrapnel, C4, RPGs, and the overall most annoying thing, so much shit in this game explodes. It's like you're playing a fucking Michael Bay invented game. Everything explodes, from little propane tanks to shit you didn't even know. Cars, everything. I run quick fix because most of my videos I'm trying to rush for a tactical position, so I'm encountering enemies in the first 15 to 30 seconds of gameplay, and if there's more than one, it usually allows me to get both kills because I've already healed from the first encounter. So it could be swapped out. It's not a big deal, but if you're going to rush, I would recommend quick fix. I think it is actually relatively useful in those situations if you're gonna, push for a power position and encounter multiple enemies. You could also use double time. Now, double time to me is not super important. The reason, you could just use stims and theoretically cover the same if not more distance while still maintaining EOD or quick fix. Double time I think really doesn't have a place. I'm sure in a niche position where you had to use maybe a stun grenade instead of stims in order to counter the enemy, maybe, but realistically I would stick with EOD or quick fix. I use hardline, and that's just because, again, I said I don't typically use Ghost, and this allows me to get a kill streak one person faster, which I've found more useful, especially since I have to carry my team. Sometimes it's me and my kill streak who have to win a round as opposed to me and my teammates. This could also be substituted for restock. Restock is phenomenal for any type of AR gameplay, because if you're not rushing into their spawn, if you're not full aggro just trying to attack them, then you're just trying to control power positions, this allows you to get your equipment back over time. Stims, so if you get shot at and you're in a power position, you stem up, re-peek, whatever, it's going to give you access to your grenades, so if you're not able to cover a bomb, you do have a chance of at least nading the person off, and even if you don't kill them, you get that information that they're there and you play accordingly. I use shrapnel for this class, again, just because I'm trying to control positions about mid-map. I'm typically not wanting to go into their spawn. This is going to allow me to pre-nade, and it gives me multiple options as far as, even if I don't kill people, with EOD, I have that second grenade to work with, and typically it can get me the kill, or at least more information. You could switch this out for like a tune-up, but typically if you're playing well and you're getting 1 to 2 kills per round, you're gonna get your dead silence up fast enough. It doesn't really matter. Tune-up, I would say, is more if you're an unconfident player and you're doing a lot of camping, because it's going to passively recharge your dead silence for later in the round. It's a preference, but I don't think tune-up is necessarily worth it, especially because you're going to guaranteed get a kill against an EOD player if you have that second grenade. It also slows down their heal recovery time, so even if you don't kill them, they're going to be weaker for longer, so you can push them. So shrapnel, very, very good perk for an assault rifle type class. Now the next thing we're using is the rush class. So typically you're going to run stims. I use either a frag grenade, C4, or Semtex. It's very situational. I'm going to use hardline for the same reasons I described above. I don't think restock is worth it for the rushing class, because you're either A, going to end the round in the first minute, or B, you're going to die very quickly because you are full head-on running at people, even on cheeky rush routes. You could argue for high alert, but again, it's kind of personal preference. I would rather get my kill streaks faster. Maybe instead of being 2 off, I could be 1 off a kill streak and get that Harrier. That seems more valuable to me than high alert. Now, I'll run tune-up on my SMG for the simple reason that even if I spawn grenade people, I'm more likely going to get kills with my gun than I am with spawn grenades, because I'm not trying to hold a position as much as I'm trying to run at them and get up close. So I would rather have tune-up to get the dead silence as fast as possible so I can continue pushing behind them, flanking, going into their spawn, whatever. I would also recommend Battle Harden for this, especially on maps like Shoot House, Hackney Yard, because people are going to try and counter you by what I would do with my assault rifle and push mid-map and then throw grenades, so on and so forth, etc. So either one of those are extremely viable. Again, I use Quick Fix just because I really am trying to get in there. I'm trying to take on gunfights head on and just kill multiple enemies, but EOD or Double Time would be good options as well. EOD more so than Marathon, just because if you're stimming with EOD, you're covering the same distance because stims refresh your tactical sprint and you have grenade protection. There's no map that I can think of. Double time plus stims is really going to matter. Like, you're never going to be directly running that much. Maybe on like Petrograd for an A rush, but again, EOD or Quick Fix would be my pick with stims. You always use collie sticks, and that's because right now they have the highest mobility, so you can move the fastest, even faster than a knife. So they're not just there to troll people and beat people with sticks, they're there because they give me a mobility advantage. The actual setup I use on the MP5 is going to be the monolithic integral suppressor. You could make an argument that the monolithic is better. I don't think, and don't quote me on this, but I don't think the range difference between the two, or the bullet velocity, is actually a calculable difference, meaning the monolithic may, in theory, give your gun more range, but it's so negligible that I don't think bullet for bullet, it actually has a calculable difference, so it doesn't really matter. Would recommend running this or the monolithic though, because the increased range at a far distance is going to prevent your bullet from dropping into a 5 kill to a 6 kill shot range. It's going to keep you at more of that 4 to 5. I use the collapsible stock again for ADS speed. I think ADS speed is extremely important, especially on a gun like this. You're typically not going to be mapping people with the MP5. Stippled grip tape, obviously it's a must. Now this one, we use the Merc 4 grip because it's an SMG. We do want that hip fire accuracy as opposed to an assault rifle. So you could make an argument for using commando, but realistically you're going to want to use this for the recoil control and the hip fire accuracy, just because you're going to be up close with the SMG. Now here's the big one that I think a lot of people have had questions with. Warzone has caused a bit of a meta change, because in these last few patches, Infinity Ward has been changing guns not according to multiplayer gameplay. They've been changing guns according to Warzone, which in their defense is the more popular version of the game right now, so they're trying to keep those people happy. But long story short, the 10mm rounds had a range nerf. Okay? They nerfed the range at which these were effective. With that, obviously, coming from Warzone, because you're having much greater distances. You could quite literally map people with the MP5 in Warzone. It was kind of nutty. With that change, in my personal opinion, using these now will give you an increased damage. But because of the nerf to the range, them plus the monolithic integral suppressor are actually not going to change how many bullets it takes to kill at greater distances. It will kill faster up close. Not by much, but it will kill faster up close. But because of the nerf to the range, this plus the monolithic integral suppressor literally serve no point at great distances anymore. It's not going to kill any faster. I, because of this, have switched over to the 45 round mags. One of the reasons being, if you look, there's a fire rate difference. That fire rate difference is very important because guns with higher fire rates are more forgiving. What I mean is, if you miss shots, since the bullets are coming out faster, this game actually has bullet travel and bullet velocity. The higher the fire rate, the more shots you're going to get into a person if you're inaccurate. Now, I'm very accurate, but if somebody's strafing me, I have a chance to hit them with 2 bullets, where with the 10mm, I would only maybe hit them with 1. And because of the nerf to the range, at distance, The 45 round mag provides a higher fire rate, more bullets are going to hit your target. The amount of bullets it takes at great distances remains unchanged, so you're not going to hit any harder with the 10mm rounds at range. So realistically, at the end of the day, the 45 round mag is superior because you're shooting faster with the same amount of damage, and you have a bigger ammo clip to maybe kill the person who comes behind you after you kill somebody else at range. Now, this may be subjective to gameplay style. If you love getting right up in their face, 10mm is going to still kill faster. But realistically, the 45 round mag is going to be better. It also opens up the fact that with the 10mm, you should be running sleight of hand because you only have 30 shots. In a submachine gun that you're going to be up in somebody's face, you're probably going to have to reload after 2 kills. With 45 round mags, you can realistically kill 3 to 4 people without reloading, which opens up the fact that you can now use either the collapsible, you always should use this. You should always use this, but before, you would run this setup with sleight of hand instead of the collapsible stock. So your ADS speed would be slower. I think the 45 round mags are a lot better than the 10mm rounds. You can do your own testing, but at range, there's no damage difference, and you're shooting faster with a better ammo capacity. I don't know how you could tell me that the 10mm is still better. I'm going to show this. I don't encourage anybody to use this. As a disclaimer, I think if you're using this, you're kind of a bad person, but when other people are using it and you need to really try and prevent them from being assholes, this is what I like to use. It's my 725 class. I use restock because typically if I'm using this, I'm going to hold down power positions inside buildings, and I'm going to camp with 2 claymores at one door and the other people that are going to funnel right into death with my 725. I use stims and EOD because with this class, you're typically not going to sit in your spawn. That's actually how you don't get kills and how you lose rounds. You're going to push power positions at choke points as fast as possible and force them to just come in close and get destroyed, dumpstered by your 725 claymore setup. You're going to want to use shrapnel for double claymores. Typically, I do place 2 claymores at one door to guarantee I kill EOD people. It's a safety thing. If you spread your claymores out, you can technically hold down more of a zone, but if somebody with EOD comes in, they're not going to die to the claymore, and then, yes, you know where they're at, but there's a chance they could kill you, so always recommend 2 claymores at one door. As far as the 725, sawed-off barrel, and that's just because it's going to increase the spread. There used to be a glitch where this actually gave you more spread but didn't decrease the damage at range at all. That has been fixed. I still think it is the personal best. You're going to want to use the choke because the choke is going to give you damage range and a tighter pellet spread to kind of counteract the sawed-off effect. So with the sawed-off, what you're actually getting is the movement speed and the aim-down sight speed. The wider pellet spread really isn't important, but it's very important to have that movement and ADS speed. So the choke just really counters that and keeps the damage the same. You're going to use the Tempest Slim Grip. Again, sprint to fire speed, ADS speed, it's the stripled grip tape of the 725. It's a must. You could technically use the 5mm laser. I don't like people knowing where I'm coming from, and the hipfire accuracy I gain doesn't justify me having to aim down sights to prevent people from seeing the big ass green laser. So I just use the 1mm laser, but it's all personal preference at the end of the day. And then sleight of hand. Only reason you're using sleight of hand for this gun is you got 2 shots. The faster you can reload, the faster you can dumpster the next fool who walks through the door and challenges you in your corner with this 725 because you're the best Call of Duty player who's ever lived. As far as snipers go, if you are truly just the most meta human being alive, there's not much to this. Use any sniper of your choice. With the recent buff, it literally doesn't matter. Use whatever sniper you choose. Overkill it. Put on a primary weapon of your choice, MP5, M4, 725, doesn't matter, and then you're going to run amped. Literally, that's all there is to it. Amped causes you to switch your weapons faster. As far as what sniper you use, they all pretty much kill if you're hitting waist or above. Even the Car 98 got a buff, so it truly doesn't matter. It's personal preference. And then you run your primary, either one of the 2 meta choices I showed you with amped. Again, I use quick fix. You can realistically use EOD. I would never recommend double time for this class. If you don't have a knife to sprint with, there's really no point in having double time. So use EOD or Quick Fix, feel good about yourself. Cold-blooded is stupid. It doesn't stop thermals from being able to see you, it just makes you not glow. Don't really recommend it unless you're hiding from a kill streak. And that is about it. If you have any questions or you want to see anything else, please let me know. I hope this helps a lot of players who are coming back to the game, or maybe players who've been playing and they feel like they weren't getting the kills because they weren't using guns that they should be, or classes they should be. The ultimate disclaimer for this entire video is this is meta. This is what you have to use if you want to consistently do well every single game. If you use weapons that are worse, for example, I'm using a Scar class right now because I think the red bullets are lit. It's not going to do as good as the M4. It's not possible, so I'm putting myself at a disadvantage, but I love the gun. I would encourage you to use guns you like, so if you have a gun that you want me to make a setup on, drop a comment down below and I will try to help you out. But ultimately, your M4 and your MP5 are always going to be your meta setup. The MP5 is by far still the best submachine gun, as well as the M4 is probably the best assault rifle, not with the highest damage or fire rate, but simply the best handling and headshot damage. Hope you guys enjoy. Thanks for tuning in. Peace.